So good day, friends. This is Dr. Bob Hamilton, and you have tuned in today to the Hamilton Review, where kids and culture collide. So I always say this, but I mean it from my heart. Those of you who tune into my show, it means a lot to me because you, like me, and like everybody else in the world, we're doing things. We're busy people. We're zipping around, taking care of kids, grandkids, trying to make ends meet. And the fact that you tuned in today means a lot. So thank you for doing that. If you like what you hear, and I hope you do, pass it on to your friends and neighbors and anybody you can think of. We're building an audience, and the reason we're building an audience is because those people that I bring to you on a weekly basis are phenomenal people. And today is a pleasure to welcome back someone that I had on the show in May. Her name is Pam Lobley. She is a remarkable woman. She's accomplished. She's done lots of things. First of all, she's a mom of two boys, and she's also an author of the book entitled "Why Can't We Just Play?" And we're going to talk about that book to a degree, but we're going to talk about other things because on the previous podcast that was our focal point. But this time we're going to move on to other thoughts. So Pam Lobley, thank you, and welcome back to the Hamilton Review.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here.
So, for those who did not hear the previous podcasts, and those if you haven't, back up and listen to it. It was, I think, in May, into May. But for those of you who haven't, I'd like Pam, if you would just kind of back up and tell us a little bit about this book entitled "Why Can't We Just Play?" It's an interesting title, and that is actually a quote from one of your sons. And
Correct.
I'll let you kind of take it from there.
Okay. So, my back when my 2 sons were 7 and 10, we were living in the typical, I think, overscheduled family lifestyle. The kids were in grade school, but they had lots of activities like karate and soccer and Boy Scouts, and they took music lessons, and we were racing around all over the place. And I was definitely feeling the pressure of that, as I think parents do. And my husband and I were both feeling like, are we doing this right? Are we supposed to feel so exhausted? Are we supposed to feel like we never have time with our kids? It was an odd feeling. And one night when I was tucking my kids into bed, my son Sam started crying and said that he never had time to play. So he was 10 years old at the time, 5th grade. And I was completely flabbergasted because I thought all he did was play. He went to soccer, he went to karate, we played on the playground after school, he did all kinds of things, but that was not play to him. Play was something that he would do independently with friends, not structured, not supervised by adults, led by himself. And he was a very imaginative kid, as most kids are, and he loved just playing what he made up with his brother or with his friends. So I took a step back and I decided to give my kids a summer with no scheduled activities, which was then and still is now, I think, a pretty radical idea. I was lucky enough, I was working from home. I'm a writer, so I worked from home anyway. And I thought I can juggle this, I can make it happen. And I took the plunge. I also, because I'm a writer, I thought of it as a summer from the 1950s. So I took kind of a thematic approach of going back in time. What could I learn from those families, if anything? What had changed, and how could I bring some sanity and balance back to our life? And I learned a lot. um, we had a great summer. The kids, I think that they did thrive in the absence of activities. They found ways to entertain themselves. They were definitely bored. They definitely bickered and got on my nerves and each other's nerves. But there was so much that was good about it because they got to be autonomous in a way that I don't think we let kids be autonomous these days. I think that they are completely over supervised and constantly monitored and improved and uh, molded to their detriment and ours. So,
Yeah, I mean, you were off. I mean, mind you, I think that if I remember correctly, that you had your entire summer kind of planned out. You were this comment from your son, whose name is what?
Sam,
Sam. Okay, so Sam, you were talking about your summer plans and what do you want to do, Sam? And you want to do this camp and that camp. And then he looked at you and he kind of, and the crying happened, and he said, why can't we just play?
Mhm.
And I obviously that took you back, and you kind of thought, because I don't want you to play, because I want you to be scheduled, right? You and you're kind of, I'm sure that was like, well, where's this coming from? And but clearly you were an outlier, and some of your friends will tell us about that.
So I had this idea. Once it took root, I was very excited about it, and when I told the kids, they were very excited about it because they were sick of all the pressure. But when I tried to get other moms to do it with me, no one was interested. And to be fair, some kids thrive on a schedule. Some kids love that busy thing. They love the organized day to day. So, listen, if it's not broken, don't fix it. They were fine. But I think other mothers just thought, how would that even work? What would I do? It seemed probably too overwhelming and off the beaten path for most people. And I'm somebody who's not afraid of the road not taken. So I was ready for that. However, it did set me up for some obstacles because if you want your kids to free play, but there's not a lot of kids around to free play with, that is a challenge.
Yeah. Well, I know you spent a lot of time at the public pool,
Yes.
which seemed they would find friends there, I'm sure, and at least they were out of your hair for a while and in the
Yes.
water and underwater, hopefully, so they weren't at least talking. So, the other thing too is they got bored. I happen to be a believer in boredom for kids. I know that seems maybe an odd thing for me as a pediatrician to say, but I do think that boredom is one of those. First of all, I think boredom is a feeling that is one of the most uncomfortable feelings for human beings. And start with that. But I mean, but I also think that out of boredom is born a different a creativity.
It,
Because you sit there and you start kicking around, and first of all, you start fighting with your brother, usually, which I'm sure happened once or
yep.
twice. But then you begin to think, okay, what are we going to do? And I'm sure that question was asked a lot. Speak to that if you would, Pam.
So, totally agree with you about boredom. I think that boredom, in a weird way, is a luxury that no one has in our society anymore. You know, being adults, we're rarely bored because there's so much to
Hold on,
do
did
all
you?
the time.
Excuse me. You said a luxury? Did
A
you say that?
luxury. I
Okay,
did say a luxury
okay,
because even though, like you say, it is one of the most uncomfortable feelings, it leads to so many other things. And I mean, if you can remember back to your childhood and I could remember back to mine, there was these stretches of emptiness, which were boring, but they also led to daydreaming or making up a new game or creativity in some form. And I don't think you can get to those places unless you walk through boredom. And so giving my kids the opportunity and kind of forcing them to walk through boredom, let them experience the payoff on the other side. But
yeah,
it takes a lot of courage because boredom looks like idleness, and that is really frowned on, and even for children in our society, we're not supposed to be letting people stare off into space or just pretend they're Spider-Man all day. That just
yeah.
seems quite unproductive.
Well, I mean, and in today, I think that that was a while ago that this all happened with you. Now we are inundated with content between our all of the things and the TV, the screens, iPhones, and all this different content, different ages. Of course, for younger kids, they shouldn't be on a telephone. A lot of them are, or if not a telephone, they're on iPads.
iPad.
But anyway, now I honestly even in my own office, Pam, I have people who bring in their iPads and their kids are watching the iPad when I walk in the door, and they're on it virtually. I have to tell them to turn it off. So that's I think the boredom is something that I agree with you. It is somewhat of a luxury that we don't allow our kids to engage with, and we think boredom is horrible, bad, but if if you when you were a kid, if you said, "Mom, I'm bored," what did your mom tell you?
I she didn't skip a beat. She just said, you know, the equivalent of, "Well, then figure something out." She didn't offer me solutions. It wasn't like she, you know, put aside her work and said, "Well, let's get in the car and do something fabulous."
Yeah.
You know, "You're bored. It's summer and you're 9, so you're gonna be bored some portion of the day. You have
Yeah,
to figure it out." And then you do. And when you do, I think is how you discover your interests. Do you like to read? Do you like to play make believe? Are you going to go play sports? Like, what would all the things be that you would solve your boredom with?
yeah,
So, and I think too, and this is going to sound um, judgmental, but you know, it's just too easy to give the kids a screen. It's
yeah,
so it's annoying when kids are bored. It's super annoying. And whether you're in the grocery store or the doctor's office or a restaurant or at home, and they start that whining or they start, you know, maybe knocking stuff over or whatever they're going to do, now you have to deal with it, and if you just give them a screen, they immediately stop that behavior.
yeah.
So I understand why it's so popular.
So you mentioned a word here. You said that they have become more they became more autonomous. And obviously I know what that word means. I mean, but your kids 10 years of age, do you want them to be autonomous, or you're talking about obviously independence and the idea that they're not always grabbing you and whining at you and pulling at your skirt. They're actually beginning to be a little bit independent thinkers and independent doers. Can you elaborate how that autonomy actually was observed by you and your boys?
I think the biggest way was just through their play, through them deciding, well, let's pick up this rock and use it this way, or let's go upstairs. And remember my one son, gosh, it was the hottest day, and he got dressed up in like a sport coat and a bow tie and you know, a black pants, and he made some pretend walkie-talkie and went out in the backyard and pretended he was a secret agent while the sweat was pouring off him. I mean,
Oh, that's
you can't think that stuff up. I could never say, "Why don't you get overdressed in a lot of hot clothes and go in the backyard and pretend you're a secret agent?" It just would never happen. So, letting them just do things, and by the way, that makes no sense. Like, if he had said, "Mom, should I get dressed up in a wool sport coat and go in the backyard?" I would have said, "No, that's a," but for him, it was an awesome idea. So just the whole idea that they are allowed to try that and then experience the consequences. Maybe it was really hot and uncomfortable, or maybe he just didn't care because it was so much fun. So like having an original idea and having the energy and the resources to carry it through to a natural conclusion, I think was a skill that I saw them learn. As a parent, it's so delightful to watch them do all these things. Like, where did they get that idea? And so there's a lot of joy to be had in that. And so, yeah, I think that was a big help in growing their autonomy, that type of play.
So the other thing I know that you did as a family is you went on vacation, and
Mhm.
you spoke very highly of that. And I think that one of the things, this is just me thinking about what happened that summer for you, is that you were able to go on vacation. Sometimes the kids are so scheduled in camps and this and that that they're not. There's no time for vacation. There's no time for family vacation.
Mhm.
You're a big fan of family vacations, and so am I. So your thoughts about that? Because I know that you went down to the Outer Banks or somewhere down there. I think in the
Yeah.
Carolinas. Yeah,
So, my parents had started a tradition when we all started having our kids, that we would all gather for an extended family vacation, which I know some families do. And so we would do that every summer. And in the book, we do it that summer too. And I think you and I talked about last time the value of cousins. Because
yeah.
when your families live kind of far apart, like I do, we each live in a different state. I have two siblings, you don't see each other on a regular basis. But it was so funny to me how, and you know, they were 9. They didn't talk on the phone in between family vacations. They had almost no contact, but we'd get together and it was like no time had passed. They would just uh, play cards or ride bikes in the driveway. and get the giggles and do all the things in such a great way that you knew there was a bond there that just would never be broken. The time might pass, but they're always gonna have those summers with whatever memories they create and the way that they impact each other. I
Yeah.
remember my one, uh, I woke up and I was having coffee and 2 of the my Jack and his cousin Jake were riding bikes in the driveway in their pajamas, and they were shouting back to each other like, "Jack, we haven't even had breakfast and we're riding bikes in our pajamas." And the other one said, "And we're not even wearing underwear." I mean, those types of things, those are great memories that
Yeah.
enrich people's lives. And, so this is what can happen if you're lucky on a family vacation. The other poignant thing about that vacation, and this is in the book, is that my dad was showing signs of Alzheimer's, and he had just been diagnosed. And that summer was the summer he basically told us, "I've I've been diagnosed with Alzheimer's." And so that summer was the beginning of the end of a certain type of summer. We still went on vacation. Things started to be very different, but it ties in with the theme of this book, which is that you never know how many days you have. And it's so important to choose actively what you want your days to look like.
Yeah.
So
And I think that that was a theme of your book in the last couple chapters. This realization that uh, life moves on, and it isn't. Today will only be today. It isn't tomorrow, and you don't have tomorrow. You don't have yesterday. You have today, and I think that you almost had an epiphany during this summer of love. You call it that? I don't know if you call that
maybe.
of whatever it was, and you had this sense that this is these moments of the summer were beginning to slip away, but also you had a realization of the lives of your children, and the time that you had with them was of a finite period as well. Um,
Yes.
yeah.
I
So
think I think too, that was one of the we talk about the impetus for the book, my kids being overscheduled and wanting to play. But if I'm honest, the other reason was that I was personally feeling like I'd like a different type of motherhood. I'd like a slower, less pressure motherhood because I wasn't enjoying it that much. And I had the strangest feeling that I was missing their childhood, even though I was there for all of it, just because we were racing around so much and so much of their time was spent doing something apart from me, like going to karate class or being on the soccer field. And nothing wrong with any of those things. But if you pile up too many of them, all of a sudden, how have you spent that day? So I just wanted something that felt more solid, more I don't know the words. Like we were really a solid unit that was enjoying each other for this time that we would have together, knowing that that would be a finite time. Like you say, kids grow up.
yeah, I mean, I think about the culture we have today, and part of it is because I think we have a larger number of women who are working, and so they don't want their kids hanging around at home, certainly without them. So they want them engaged in something. But I do think that and then my subtitle of my show is "Where Kids and Culture Collide," and I do think that there is this cultural phenomenon going on that we're first of all a little bit of FOMO. We're kind of fearing of missing out, and we certainly don't want our kids to miss out, right? We want, I mean, I think we probably both share this idea that we obviously want to optimize um, the experiences that our children have just for their benefit. So that cultural thing of doing this and doing that, I mean, there's a infinity of things that kids can do. And I happen to be a believer in activities. I believe in music lessons and art lessons and team sports and all that kind of thing. And so I don't want to say anything that is not really me. I really believe in that in a big way. But I do think that there's this pressure out there, and you felt that pressure, Pam, to keep your kids on the treadmill.
Very much, and I think it ties in too, like you say, the FOMO. We're so desperate to give our kids the best and make sure they have the best, and a lot of pressure to have a certain, be ready to get into a certain type of college, whatever that is for your family. And that pressure, my gosh, I think it starts when they're about 5 years old, if not sooner. So then what happens is everything you do, instead of being just for fun, like, oh, they play soccer once a week and nobody's very good, but who cares? It turns out that it's training for a travel team that if you make it, it's 3 times a week. And if your kid really wants to make it, he better get a side coach to practice a little, or he's not going to make it. And everything gets so ramped up that the fun kind of gets drained out of it. And then also possibly you're spending less time together as a family. I agree with you. I'm 100% for activities. My kids did. I mean, both my kids did Boy Scouts and ended up being Eagle Scouts. That's a ton of work.
Yeah,
So, and they took music lessons and the whole thing. But that was later. That was later. It wasn't when they were 8 and 9. And I think that part of maybe what's happened is, we've let the pressure just bleed backwards into younger and younger years so that we're already thinking that 6 or 7 years old is too young to just have or too old to have a free schedule. By that
yeah.
age, they should be all lined up with their chosen activities.
I interviewed a guy named Gary Holt Jr., who remarkable guy. He was actually a gold medal winner, I guess, in the Olympics. He's a swimmer, and he said something that I'll never forget. He said his father was a very good swimmer, and I said, "Well, Gary, did your father push you? Was he part of the training and everything?" And he said, "No." He said, "Bob, he said one thing. He said, have fun." Every time he had a meet, he would look at his son, and he himself was a very accomplished swimmer, but he looked at Gary Hall Jr. And he said, "Son, have a good time. Just have fun. Don't this is fun for you." And somehow that translated to Gary Hall Jr. having fun. Now, mind you, he won several gold medals and all sorts of medals, and highly highly successful guy. And clearly there was a little bit of work behind the fun, but the idea of having fun. Listen, kids can do things. I always when I have kids in my office, they tell me I ask them, "What are you doing?" And they say, "I'm doing this and that other thing." And I look at them and say, "Are you having fun? Do you like to do this?" And if they go, "Yeah, I love it. I love basketball. I love to play basketball. I love this." I go, "That's great. Keep doing it." And I encourage kids to find that sense of passion for sure and do it. But I think that so many of the kids out there, and you can comment on this, are being taken to one activity after the other activity. They're not necessarily loving it. They're kind of fulfilling, to a degree, a checklist that their parents have established.
I agree. And I think part of that is because every activities aren't necessarily planned to just be fun. They all seem to have this end game of you're going to get a scholarship, you're going to get an award, you're going to get a better something. So that the idea that you would do something just because it's enjoyable, I think that also has lost credence with families. Everything is goal oriented.
Yeah,
So if and the kids feel that pressure. I mean, I think that they know that that this is quote their fun time, and yet if they don't do well in whatever this activity is, their parents are going to be disappointed, or their coach is going to be disappointed. They're going to feel like, "Gosh, we paid all this money and we drove all this way, and that's all that happened." And that's too much pressure for anybody, but especially for kids.
yeah. Oh, I agree. So you kind of doing other little thing that you commented about in your book, and that is the idea of just being with your kids and the value of that to you, and the blessing it was to you, because you look back and that was a very tender, sweet time for you. And that, as kids grow and they mature, they probably don't want to do that now. I mean, how old are your kids, Pam?
So Sam is 26 and Jack is 23.
Okay.
And yes, they they don't even return my texts.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
they do, but they have their own lives, and of course, we love to be together, but but it's different. They're independent adults,
Yeah,
so
no,
that's
I'm
how
not
that is.
kidding, because I mean, I'm sure you're not going to have your 26 and 23-year-old sons move back in your house and spend a summer of love like you did before. Probably won't work the same
No,
way. So these
however,
are these are moments in time.
yeah.
Kind of moving back to kids when they're young. What are your thoughts about? And this is a topic that is a controversial topic, but moms working full time out of the house, their kids not with them. What have you? Did you have any second thoughts about that?
Well, when I did this summer, I was working from home and I was balancing, some writing deadlines with the free time that I was trying to spend with them, which now is very familiar to so many people that do work at home, but at the time it was different. Um, so an interesting thing that I experienced halfway through the summer, even as much as I was devoting myself to the children, I felt so torn and pressured and exhausted. And I thought, I wonder what would happen if I just didn't work for the month of August. Like, let's have an experiment. And what would that be like? Would I feel more balanced, etc.?
So
And
so you could so Pam, you could be bored too.
so I could be bored too. They were having all the fun boredom. I
Yeah,
was
exactly.
having the uncomfortable boredom.
You can
Boredom.
luxuriate in your boredom. Okay, keep going.
So I did. I was able to, put some things on the back burner and basically not work for the month of August. And it was really kind of hard and horrible. First of all, when you work, you define yourself a lot by what you do. So that's a little tricky giving that up. Um, and secondly, I still had all the other feelings of, "Am I doing enough? Are we doing the things that I wanted to do?" Etcetera. And it's no matter who you are in motherhood, working or not, it's so draining because there's many times when they just want mom. No matter what, dads are wonderful, dads are awesome, and sometimes they just want dad, but there's a long period when no matter what, they just want mom. And I can remember feeling like, my gosh, I thought I would have enough in the tank if I wasn't working. I thought I would be a different type of person, and I found out I really wasn't. And there's still those moments when I just felt like, if I don't get some time to myself, if I don't get out of the house, if I don't get, whatever it is, I'm going to go crazy. And then something would happen where I have this story in the book where I'm just kind of at my wit's end, thinking, "How am I going to go one more day with all the pressures on me?" And Jack had gotten out of bed, this is my younger one, and kind of come downstairs and said he couldn't sleep because he missed me.
Mm.
Now, keep in mind, he was with me all day. But my God, what can you say to that? And he crawled in my lap and we just had a huge hug. And then he felt better. That's all it took was a giant hug from mom.
Mm.
And I think in those moments, I really realized that no matter how drained you are, no matter how tough it is, there is a reward. And it's kind of like if you can walk through that pain of boredom, you can get the reward. If you can give yourself some grace in those moments of being so drained or being so conflicted and just accept how much you're needed, how much you're loved, how what a huge difference you make, then you can get the reward and somehow you get the strength for the next day.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I experienced. I hope every mom gets to experience that type of renewal. We need it.
Yeah. No, I think that being with your children is underrated. I think that we tend to I do see that, a maternal time, mat time, they call it, is increasing for a lot of women, and they're working. And I think that that's kind of a demand that a lot of young women are going into their
Mm,
jobs with is, tell me what we get for, maternal time off. The other good thing, which I regard as really, really good, is that more and more women are working from home. And because of like right now, you and I are talking, you're in New Jersey, I'm in California, we're having a very, dynamic
yeah,
conversation here. But you can do a lot from home with all the technology we have. That is phenomenal. And I think that more and more gals, my observation is that they don't want to go into the office. They don't want to drive a half an hour to get to their, workplace and spend
mhm,
8 hours there and then come back at the end of the day beat and,
yeah,
going through traffic and everything else.
yeah,
So I think this is a game changer. I think that you're going to see more and more women with younger children able to work out of the home. Maybe they're not always in the same room with their child, but they're in earshot, and they can break from their whatever. They can put their computer on mute for
yeah,
a minute or two, and take out the camera and go attend to their child without too much interruption in their actual productivity. And I think that this is a huge change. I'm actually really happy to see how many women are doing that.
yeah. I think it's great for them and for their kids. And I've also read a lot that the generation now, maybe like your kids' age, are really focused on work-life balance. Maybe our generation was much more focused on, success, whatever, financial success or climbing the ladder and all that kind of stuff. And
Yeah,
now the pendulum is swinging the other way, and technology is allowing us to do that, which is great. I agree that's a great that's a great development. But there's still there's still that feeling of, I think there always will be with moms, that there's a level of sacrifice that happens as your kids are growing up, and there's no way around it. And I think it's okay to just say, wow, this is really hard, but it's nothing could be more worth it.
yeah.
So
No, I think that in particular, I think that women, and I may be getting into on the edge here, but um, I think that women go through seasons more than men. And I've made this observation many times. Men kind of get to be about 14 or 15 and don't change from there. I think, our brains are frozen about that. Our maturity level is about the same. But women seem to have these seasons. They have obviously periods. They get pregnant. They have a baby. They have breastfeed. Then they don't. Then they're not pregnant. And they go through these very demonstrable different life cycles than men. And I think there are different seasons of life for all of us, really. But ladies, I think the ladies kind of demonstrate that more dynamically, say, than say men. But I do think that that season of motherhood. I mean, let me ask you a question: are you happy you're a mother?
oh, of course. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
I mean, uh, I wouldn't trade those years for anything, for any money, any job, anything. They were
yeah,
just great. So, and I think, most parents feel that way. They're thrilled that they were parents. The thing about the sacrifice, or the season of motherhood sacrifice, I feel like we in our society, we really applaud sacrifice for jobs and getting ahead. There's a lot of celebration of that type of person that, gets their masters while they're working full time, and then or starts a startup or works 80 hours to achieve this, and we admire that. And by the same token, though, when we talk about somebody making huge sacrifices for their family, giving stuff up for their kids or their family, their marriage, somehow that seems wimpy. And
yeah.
yet and yet we know that relationships are the things that bring us the most happiness. So to sink your time and energy into relationships seems like the best investment,
Yeah.
really.
No, I think you're right, and I was married to a woman who unabashedly was a mommy, and she was happy being a mom. And listen, our children benefited from her. There's a sacrifice. I mean,
Yeah.
it really is. Because if you talk to moms, I ask this question all the time. High-powered mothers who have big jobs, a lot of responsibility. I go, what's more difficult, your job or your are you taking care of your kids all day? And they go, they look at me and they laugh. They said, yeah, the job is nothing compared to what I
Yeah.
do on a day-by-day basis in the home. So that is so true, and because there's a lot of work. I mean, there's a lot of work to be a mom, a dad too. I mean, I'm not taking us out of the equation, but I think on a day-by-day basis, my observation is that women do more of the heavy lifting than guys do. But that's not isn't universally true, I know, but that's my observation. Well, listen, Pam. Thank you again for taking your precious time to spend on the Hamilton Review. Um, Again, I want to let people know that the book that she wrote, Why Can't We Just Play, is out there. You can find it. Where can you find it, Pam?
You can buy it wherever books are sold. It comes in an audiobook format, Kindle, and paperback. So it's on Amazon. You can go to the publisher's website, which is Familius, and buy it there too. Um, it's
And it's a great book, you guys. It'll make you think. I promise you. If you get it, you'll kind of go, why didn't I do this? That was one of the thoughts I had. So is a great book. And in general, Pam, how can people find you?
So I'm on Instagram at Pam Lobley, and I have you can find out more about the book on pamlobley.com/play. And that I'm on Facebook too, Pam Lobley on Facebook, but I tend to be more active on Instagram.
Okay. And I think I asked this question last time. We'll ask it again. So what's the next book coming from Pam Lobley?
Well, I've written a couple of novels actually that I'm pitching around now, um, romantic comedies, because I started as a comedy writer before
Ah,
I did all this, which is why the book is funny. Um, and I'm also working on, I have some ideas for, I'm interested in this phase of life that I'm in now, that all my friends are in now, in between raising kids and being old. Because in the old days, when you were close to retirement age, close to 65, you were so old. And now we're young. We can expect to live to be, well, you can expect to live to be 80 or 90. All of our parents are. And
yeah,
so how I kind of am thinking of it in the same way. How could I make the most of this time in the same way that I tried to make the most of those motherhood years? Like, what are the unique and fabulous things about this time that will never come again that I can really dig into now? And I think a lot of us are thinking that because we don't have a lot of models for that. My grandparents, when they were 60, their health was already failing.
yeah.
So it's a different world, and I think it has a lot of possibilities, and it demands a lot of intentionality.
Yeah. No, we're fortunate to have. I think our health in our generation certainly is better than it was in our parents' generation. And I mean, Peter Attia, who has a book out there called Outlive, which I recommend to everybody. It's a phenomenal book. One of the top bestsellers on the Wall Street Journal booksellers. Outlive. He talks about the bonus decade of your life, where if you maintain your health and you're taking care of yourself, you can actually enjoy the final decade of your life very productively. And so that's
Wow.
something. So you're on the pathway, Pam, of a lot of smart people. So get going on that. I'd
Okay.
like to talk to you about that too. So listen, friends, you have been listening today to the Hamilton Review, where kids and culture collide. We've had another conversation with Pam Lobley, talking about her thoughts about kids and boredom and autonomy, lots of things, and what it means to be with your kids for an extended period of time. Very, very good. So, Pam, thank you again for taking the time to be here. I appreciate your time, and I wish you the very best.
It was my pleasure. It was really fun to talk to you again. I love your podcast.
Thank you, Pam. Okay, take care.
Okay.
Bye bye.
You have been listening to the Hamilton Review, where kids and culture collide. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of your day. Tune in again next week on Apple Podcast. Rate and comment and tell a friend.